but it's good stuff. We're talking about counseling and dealing with difficult people. So there's obviously different types of counseling. You have preventive counseling, and you also have career counseling. What we're going to talk about most of today is preventive or remedial counseling. So the goal of counseling is often to correct something that's going wrong, whether that be performance or behavior. But the main point of counseling is to try to prevent future occurrences of the same type of behavior or processes to happen. So why do we counsel employees? Several reasons. Unsatisfactory productivity. Maybe someone's supposed to be making 20 calls a day and they're only making 10. Poor or apparently deteriorating work habits. So maybe someone started out as a workhorse, 6 months later, what happened? Violations of policies, rules, procedures. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Inability to get along with others. This one happens all the time. Yeah. Chronic complaining, and obviously complaints from patients or customers. So why do we break rules? Because we all do it at some point, right? So let's talk about that. Why do we break rules?
I catch myself if I do break a rule. It's usually it's something little, but
little to you.
Yeah, it's little to me. But the reason I do it is because somebody's either rushing me around and I have to cut a corner, and it's not really something I want to do, but I have to because of my time. And
so time.
Yeah, sometimes it might be
I have to cut that corner because of time.
Okay, time.
For the greater purpose, yeah. It might be for something or someone that you might have to break a rule for, or you might not follow the regulations in the T for that certain person or peer that you're working with that, you know, oh, I can't do this, can you do this for me? No, I can't do this, policy says you have to do it, blah, blah. But I do it anyway.
Okay. What about you? Are you agree or you have something different?
No, I understand. The only time I usually break a rule is like if there's like an accident or something that has to be done. You know,
so
like
something out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Okay. Contingency kind of thing. Well, here are a few other ones. One is they consider the rewards to be greater than the risk, which is kind of, I think, what you said, looking at the greater picture. Misfits, influenced by other workers. They're aware that the rules are rarely enforced. It won't matter if I break the rule because they won't do anything about it, right? They see rules as meaningless. We've all had rules where we've wondered, like, why is that a rule? So sometimes people break rules because of that, or they never learn. This is where training comes in and why it's so important to make sure you have thorough training, because sometimes employees will break rules and say that they never knew about it. So on the flip side, as supervisors, why do we fail to counsel? May not be aware of the problem. We have our heads so into the things that we have to do every day that we don't have a pulse on what everybody else is doing. They may simply ignore the problem. If I'm quiet, maybe it'll go away, right? They postpone action for a more convenient time. I don't have time right now, I'll talk to them on Friday. Or they ascribe a behavior to a poor attitude and decide that little can be done. Oh, that's just the way she or he is. I can't do anything about it. They're not going to change, right? So these are some top reasons why supervisors fail to counsel. So before we actually counsel, there's some things we have to consider. What have you or others observed? Sometimes you may want to talk to other managers or supervisors on the floor to see if they're observing the same behavior as you are, because there may be a chance that you have some type of preconceived notion or bias for whatever reason, and you may be perceiving something that is not necessarily true. So it's good to check with other people to see what they're observing as well. What have you documented? We already talked about how important documentation is and how you have to keep tabs of everything, get things in writing. So what have you been documenting? Does this situation represent a relapse? Is it something they did before and then they corrected it, and now they're going back to doing what they were doing before. What does a review of the employee's record reveal? Always good to check the record, because let's say this is an employee that works in a different department before and transferred over to your department. They could have been having the same issues in a different department. So it's important to, or in a previous job. So it's important to review their file or their record. What does this person's most recent evaluation reveal? Again, checking the evaluation from last year to see if this was the same issues that you were dealing with, if it's something new. You want to check the rules and the policies and patterns of behavior. Are there any patterns? Were they doing this last month, last week, last year? Something important, and we talked about this in another lecture, don't delay the counseling. Don't put it off. The longer you put it off, the bigger the issue is going to grow in most cases. So, and that may cause a company to lose time, money, patient care may suffer. So you want to try to be, counsel as much as you can when the issue is there rather than putting it off. So what do you have to know before you begin counseling? You can't just get the employee and walk into a room and sit down. Some things you have to know, right? You got to kind of go through in your mind what you're going to say, what you're going to discuss, rather than kind of just going off the top of your head when you get in there, because you may not accomplish anything. So you want to know exactly what you're going to say in the beginning. Know your opening remarks. Why is that important?
Because you don't want to stumble over your words.
You don't want to stumble over your words, and it's the first thing that you're saying. And so what that's going to do is it's going to kind of set the tone for the meeting. So if you've already played in your head what you're going to say, but if it's something negative or something, that person may not listen to you for the rest of the meeting. So you want to make sure that your opening remarks is something that's going to catch their attention, that's not going to put them in a bad mood or a bad attitude, so that you can have a productive conversation with that person. And that's why it says the statement should be intended to boost their confidence. You don't want to bring them in the room and sit them down and say, I'm tired of you doing X, Y, and Z, and you aren't doing this, and who wants to listen to that?
It's like you treat me like a kid.
Right. Most people are automatically just going to zone out and just sit there and stare through you and not pay attention to anything you're saying.
And it's going to come to them yes, no questions, like, okay.
Right.
Yes.
Short answers.
Are you going to do it? Yes. Are you going to yes.
You want to know what you want to come out of the meeting with before you go in. So you want to know what the solution is going to be, whether that be you're going to put them on probation, or you're going to observe them for the next few days, whatever it may be. You want to already know in your mind what the solution is going to be. Even if you ask them, what do you think I should do, you still should know in your mind already what you want the end result to be. And the last thing you want to know is how you're going to respond. Because in most cases, if people are being counseled or brought in for behavior or something, they're going to be defensive. So you have to go into the meeting knowing that most likely they're going to be defensive. And so you have to prepare for that and be able to have a rebuttal, an appropriate rebuttal.
I got a couple of them, but they're not appropriate.
So we're doing the counseling interview. We're here. What are the things we need to do? Well, we need to initially project, positive mood, show that we care, we're here to help. We want to ask them if they're aware of the problem. This is important because a few slides before we said that if they didn't receive proper training, they may not know that they did anything wrong. So you want to make sure that they are aware that there's a problem, because they may not have any idea. The next thing you want to do is explain why their behavior has brought them into this meeting, and let them know that when you come in late for 5 days straight in a week, you're costing the organization $500, whatever it may be. Let them know why it's important that they need to correct that behavior and what the effects are on that behavior, whether it be effects to your department or the organization as a whole or patients, whoever it may be. Explain to them why the behavior needs to be corrected. You obviously want to give them a chance to talk. You don't want to just talk and not listen to what they have to say. That also makes someone more defensive. if they feel like you're just firing at them. So you want to encourage them to speak up and give their insight on the issue and, you know, whatever else they have to say. Get them to admit that there's a problem. A lot of times people may deny that there's a problem or an issue, even when there is one. So you want to try to get them to admit that there's a problem. You want to emphasize that it has to be fixed. You don't want to just get there and talk about the issue and not make it clear that moving forward this needs to stop and we need to fix it. So you want to make it clear that the problem should be solved, and then collectively talk about how you're going to do it and agree together how you're going to fix the issue. After the interview, you obviously want to document. One thing I suggest is, if you've done this counseling interview correctly, you will have collectively decided on points that you will do moving forward. Send out an email. Per our discussion in our counseling interview or our meeting, we agreed that for the next 2 weeks, you're going to XYZ. I'm going to follow up with you. You're going to follow up with me to make sure that everything, just document it. And sending them the email is a great way to not only document, but following up with them to make sure that everybody's on the same page and just kind of reiterating what was just discussed. In some cases, it may be a good way to also blind copy your boss or whatever, so that they also know what's going on. Everybody's on the same page. So what do we want to avoid doing? We want to avoid prescribing solutions. Why is that? Okay, well, the first thing says a quick answer can make the person feel inadequate, right? No one wants to feel inadequate. That's when we start dealing with morale issues. If your solution fails, you appear inadequate. So if you're quick to give a solution and they're like, yeah, that sounds great, and then it doesn't work, then your credibility is on the line. They're questioning you and your ability to make good decisions and lead and be a good manager. The person may feel obliged to take your advice even though they may have something better in mind. So again, if you're the manager, supervisor, and you're throwing out all the solutions, that person is a person that's, you know, working in that position every day, may have a better idea, but may not want to speak up because they're intimidated or because you've already provided a solution. So it's saying, okay, so an employee who owns the solution may try to work harder to fix it, right? If you think about when you've had an issue and you've had to sit down and talk to somebody, do you feel like you worked harder to fix it if you came up with it versus if they came up with it? If you come up with the solution, you own it.
It's kind of like
you're more accountable.
You want to make sure that it succeeds. So you
right.
got to work even harder to make sure that you prove to them that, look, this is how it's supposed to be done,
right.
and this is how we did it. You know.
Right. So you want to let them try to give the solution so that they can have that accountability and own it. And then if it doesn't go through, it's all on them and it's not on you. So if we're documenting our counseling session, here's some of the things we want to make sure that we include. The date, the problem or the issue, anything that the employee said, any of their comments, what the agreed upon resolution was moving forward. If this was a warning or a second warning, you want to include that, and then the deadline, you know, whether that be 2 weeks from now or a month. But these are the key things you want to make sure you include. If you want to include anything additional to this, that's fine, but you definitely want to include these things when you document. So let's talk about employee responses. Anybody ever heard of any outlandish employee responses? Just the typical ones. As we talked about, you can pretty much expect most people are going to be defensive, whatever it may be. Most people don't want to be accused of doing anything wrong, so they're automatic. We all become defensive at some point. So most people are automatically going to become defensive, and you have to remember that if this person is someone that's a repeat offender or has been down this road before, most of the time the behavior that they display in that meeting is something that they've done before and it worked. So if they're defensive in that meeting, they've probably been defensive before in some other meeting and it was okay, or it worked and nothing was done about it. You already talked about follow-up. So what happens when we have to counsel somebody more than once?
Then it becomes an issue, a problem. It becomes a repetitive problem.
So then it's a problem.
I mean, it's a problem when you have to counsel them the first time, but if it becomes repetitive, like constantly we're talking about the same issue all the time, we're always in this meeting about the same thing, not something different, but the same exact thing, then it's a really big problem. You either need to go one or two ways, fire them, or you need to find somewhere else for them to work.
So are we saying that the conversation then changes?
Oh yeah, it
right?
becomes something more.
The counseling, okay, just want to make sure we're on the same page. So the counseling session does change. In the second one, you want to make sure that they are aware, that you are aware that this is a repeat issue. You want to make sure that you have clearly stated what the risks are. This is your second time here. You know, you may potentially be fired if this continues. So you want to make sure that they understand that this is pretty risky. You want to offer one last chance before you take action. And you want to review what you did in the last counseling session so they see. You know, not only have you said we've been here before, but now they can see we've been here before, and you have your old counseling notes from the last meeting. And you know, this repeat counseling session is pretty serious because, number one, as a manager, you got to kind of look at yourself and say, what have I not done? Why are they back again? And so you have to know that your boss is going to be looking at you more than likely if this is a repeat session. Number two, you have to look at the employee and consider, is this somebody we want to keep on our team, or consider discharging them?
Right. So
when we get to this repeat counseling session, it's pretty serious. You again want to ask for an explanation. What's going on? You know, it's your second time here. You know, talk to me about what's preventing you from changing your behavior. Probably want to provide a new solution. Obviously, the old solution didn't work, right? So let's talk about some new solutions. Offer some new solutions. Describe the consequences of non-compliance. If you don't comply, you're fired, or you're on probation, or whatever it may be. And agree to a new action, and again, follow up, just like we did the last time. And personally, for this one, I would definitely copy, my boss or whoever. If it's a repeat, everybody needs to definitely be involved. I might even copy HR on this one too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's
just so you're covering yourself. Yeah. So we talked about counseling. We're gonna talk about difficult people. This should get interesting, right? So according to the book, they say that most of the time employees who cause the biggest frustrations aren't usually the most incompetent ones. Do you guys agree with that?
That's true.
That's true. So the ones that cause the most problems aren't the ones that you would initially think would cause the problems,
Right.
because they're not incompetent.
Right.
They're usually competent workers, know exactly what to do, know how to get the job done.
They've been there, they have the experience, but then it comes into, I don't want to change, this is the way it is.
Right, right. And typically, these people are those that have bad attitude. So it's usually not work related, or the idea that they can't do the task. It's usually attitude. How do we see negative attitudes? Productivity. They're not doing any work. Maybe they're making more mistakes than they usually make. Repeated minor violations. No team spirit. They don't want to work with anybody. Can't get along with people. Public criticism of the organization. I hate working here.
This place sucks.
This place sucks. Exactly.
I'm just using this. I'm gonna get another job.
Periodic threats of resignation. I'm leaving. I'm quitting. I'm gonna be gone next month, next year. And as you said, resistance to change. Chronic complaining happens all the time. When complainers badmouth the organization in the presence of patients. I hate when I see that. It happens. And all it does is plant a negative seed in the patient. When you are walking around saying, I hate this place, in their mind, they're preparing not to have a good experience at your hospital or at your organization. Obviously, that complaining will eventually start to spread and become toxic throughout the organization. It kind of leaches on to other people. It's just not a good thing. And we call these people negativists.
Especially when it goes to patients' families, when
Yeah.
they do it in front of families, that's really like, I mean, if you work in a nursing home or a hospital, you might can get away with the patient part of it, but when it goes to the family, that's just extra toxic. It just goes to other people's family, and then they start talking in waiting rooms.
Right.
It just gets so out of.
Word of mouth can travel fast. Negativists are, as we discussed, might be hard workers, competent, productive, but just have bad attitudes or negative outlooks on things. And it makes the work environment something that no one wants to come to work. We have know-it-alls. We all know who they are. They know everything. They know all the rules. They know how to do everything. And they're in charge. If you try to tell them they're wrong, they might get a little aggressive or defensive with you.
It's a backlash.
Yes. What about the silent ones that are just silent and don't cooperate? Those might be more difficult than your know-it-alls or your negativists, right?
You don't say nothing.
Because you don't know what
they're thinking.
Right,
You don't know what they're going to do.
You
You
don't know
don't know what
they're
they're
plotting.
contemplating. Yes, you don't know they're plotting.
It's just there.
They're just there. What about those that are super sensitive?
Criers.
Criers?
Good Lord.
Is that what you call them?
babies.
I call them
Babies.
babies.
Those are the
Criers.
ones that are going to take offense at whatever you say.
Everything's
Unless it's,
negative.
Good job. Unless you're
Yes.
saying that, they're going to take
Everything's
offense, right?
negative. And it's
in the
tears
Caribbean,
every time.
When I had to counsel a soldier, and you know, I don't want to stereotype, but women are pathetic about it. They would come in the office and they get a little, you know, slap on the wrist, and they start boo-hooing. And I'm like, really? There's no crying in the Army. Get up. You know, but they would be the first ones to start crying, like, I'm supposed to feel bad for you. You know, I'm in the same, and women are harder on women. In that organization it is, because you don't expect them to be, because you have to be stronger, because you're a minority in it.
Right.
So you have to work harder at it. And then when they come in and crying, it just really get over it. You know, you signed up for this.
Yeah.
I mean, but some people look at that, you know, as, you know, women, when they go into that part of being counseled, some of them just can't handle that they're not working up to par. And when you go to them and you tell them that, it's kind of like some of them are just really extra sensitive, and the waterworks comes and they're just, it's like their whole world just caved in, you know, and it's not, it's just something that they have to, we fought hard to get jobs and work with men and be on top. Now we have to stay there, you know, that's just how we have to look at it.
You're right. As you said, sensitive to criticism. Supervisors have to handle these type of people with care. They're fragile.
Gloves.
Moody people. We know about those people.
Yes.
You never know which way they're going to be, which day they're going to be when they come up.
Them bipolar people with split personality.
What about jealous coworkers?
Ooh, those are the worst. I think those are worse than anybody, because those are the ones that are the backstabbers. They go here, there, and everywhere, and they always got something to say
Very
about
competitive.
this.
Always want to know what other people are doing, what other people are getting paid.
Ooh, this person in the office, girl, you know.
And then they also downplay the people that are actually working.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, they didn't do anything.
Right.
Take all the credit.
Definitely. And that can affect morale, because if you're constantly downing someone else, or even when they deserve their recognition, it's going to affect your morale. We have our gossips. The water cooler crew is what I call them. Sometimes attacking people's character through gossip, especially, you know, when it's totally untrue. Typically, gossips want attention. So as a supervisor, you know, try your best to figure out how to provide them with attention. Not too much attention, but typically that's what they're looking for.
Do you ever find like that's a big issue? Gossip is a big issue.
Yeah.
Do they ever like, are they ever solved? Are those problems ever solved?
No, because you always got
It's like, once you get one, you know, okay, I got you in place, and you know, then here comes another one.
I think that some of that has to do with your organizational culture and your leadership. And if you have a strong leadership that makes it clear that they don't stand for that type of behavior in their organization, then you can kind of keep it to a minimum. Will it ever go away completely?
No.
People are going to gossip. But there are going to be some organizations where it's really bad, and there will be some where it's contained. And that's the type of behavior that you have to kind of nip in the bud with the leadership.
Yeah, because that's what you know, if I ever get to that position where I'm the actual manager, I would want none of that to exist.
Right,
Probably
right.
make it.
Well, you know, you have to have a little bit. The reason why I say that is because I was in with a company. Okay, there was all gossip, right? Everything was gossiping that they were going to close down the company, and then the managers weren't talking about whether this was going to happen or not. Well, before the month was over, they closed it down. And what was so good about it is that we had a chance to get ourselves together because of the gossip was out. You see what I'm saying?
So
there's
good
good
gossip,
gossip,
yes.
like,
but
I'm
there's
saying,
also
as long as
the
it's to a
bad.
minimum, I understand, but you gotta have a little bit because they were gonna throw us out on our butt. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm glad the gospel was out, so we had something to get
Somebody
ourselves.
leaked the
Yes.
information.
But
Yeah,
then that
I'm
could have
glad.
backfired because that month later, if they wouldn't have closed, that gossip would have probably made just about half of their employees leave because they're thinking, hey, we're going to close anyway next month, regardless if it's true or not. It's not coming from management, it's coming from other employees. So they might have go off and find them another job, and then next
May not
month
be
they
true.
don't close, and then it's like, okay, well, over half of our employees is gone. Now we have to start over and get a whole new staff.
But as long as I said, as long as you have a little bit,
Little
I'm not
bit.
saying that you should have a big amount, but it is good because certain things, there's a little bit of truth in all the gossip,
Oh,
regardless
yeah.
is lie or whatever. There's a little bit of truth. All I'm saying is that not to have, like she was saying, some of them are big, you know, a lot of them, and what. But it's good to have a little bit. You want to eradicate all. I was just saying it's good to have a little bit.
Well, yeah, I know you're never going to get rid of
Yeah.
100%, but where you just keep it to, you can contain it.
Yeah.
That's what I would like in dream of a perfect world. Where you can contain
And I think that probably in some people might argue that a little bit of gossip might also kind of build your team, or if you all are comfortable enough to talk to each other about whatever. So I think it's important to just know where to draw the line.
yeah, 'cause
Like
when I was a supervisor,
you're gossiping to the point where you're not being productive, and it's
Right.
creating,
Problems.
being toxic in our department. That we won't have. Like you guys said, there's gonna be a little bit of gossip. People are gonna talk while they're eating their lunch or whatever. But if we can contain it, then I think we're okay.
the worst gossip is the ones where they talk about people in their outside life. Like, you know, girl, I just seen her drive up in a new car. She can't afford a new car. How do you know what she's doing at home? You know, that's the gossip that you really want to stay away from. Not just the inside, just the outside gossip. Don't worry about what's going on the outside. This person, what she's driving and what she's doing and who she's talking to. You don't need to worry about all that. If it ain't got nothing to do with the job, why are you worried about what she's doing?
A lot of times they have too much time on their hands.
Too much time. You need to
And
get
so
back to
give
work.
it more work. Right. Incessant talkers and socializers kind of goes with gossip. They're not being productive. They're in the hallways all the time talking to each other. So you want to make sure, as we just said, if they're in the hallway talking, they don't have enough work. Make sure you give them more work. Employees of questionable appearance. You may have some people that come in and you're kind of like, is this okay for them to wear to work?
Do they get dressed in the dark?
Those type of employees, you have to be careful. You never want to offend anyone. And just because it's not something that you prefer doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with it. So for matters like this, you want to ask yourself these 3 questions. Is this person's appearance likely to offend customers or interfere with business? Does this individual's appearance violate any policy or rule? And is there a safety hazard involved? If you can't answer yes to these, leave them alone. Just because it's not matching or you don't like it, it's not pretty to you, doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with it.
That's why most jobs
So-
are going to uniforms.
Yeah, so just make sure you ask those 3 questions. We have our hostile people. We've talked about all the other types, and now I want to talk about hostile people a little bit. Does anybody know what a Sherman tank is? You should know. You're in the Army.
We never use
The big tanks that they use in the Army,
Oh, I
they
don't
call
know.
those Sherman Tanks. So, relating to people, Sherman Tanks are basically people who kind of just bully or run over people. So with these type of people, you want to make sure that you hear them out. Don't interrupt. Hold your ground. Don't permit any physical intimidation. All right? Maintain eye contact. Eye contact shows that you respect them and that you're not scared of them either. Hold yourself erect. Don't, tense up at them, relax, and don't counterattack. Because they're already, aggressive, and so you don't want to counterattack. If they start repeating themselves, just break in, interrupt, and reply. If you're interrupted, call them on. Excuse me, you just interrupted me. Don't let them keep, that's the way that they run people over. So make sure you call them on it if they interrupt you. Focus on solving the problems that brought you two together. Don't let that person run you over to the point that you totally forget why you're even meeting with them. And when the complaints you're hearing are legitimate, apologize and move on to solutions, right? Definitely don't put up with offensive language. So you have exploders. A little bit different from a Sherman tank. These are people that will literally explode and, basically have a temper tantrum or, act out or whatever. How do you deal with these people? Because they can sometimes get physical. You want to handle them with care too. You want to be a little, think about them as being fragile. You want to handle them with care.
Security.
Call security. Or we'll call security. 1 second.
I need you outside my door. Just.
You want to listen carefully for whatever it is that set the person off, so that you make sure you don't do it again. Don't become involved with a verbal boxing match with this person. It's only going to make them more angry. Do not try to explain complicated matters while they're upset. They're not going to listen, right? And never take personally what's said to you just because they're angry. They're just going to say whatever out of anger, so don't take it personal. We have our snipers. What do you think a sniper is?
Person who comes out from the side and
Sniper, if we think about snipers in general, they're usually hiding, right? So it's kind of the same thing. They still like to be in control, but they're not bold enough to just come out and be angry in your face. Or these are probably the type that'll probably go to your boss.
Call human resources in the top
Right.
CEO company, like,
Right.
hey, we're having a problem down here, and
Yeah.
this, that, and the other.
Typically, they're sarcastic, snide, have those types of attitudes. With a sniper, you want to bring them out into the open. You want to stop what you're doing and call the person on what was just said, right? And they typically don't function well on one-on-one situations because they're hiders. So if you can confront them one-on-one, you can probably get to the issue. Passive aggressives. What do you know about these people?
Those are the ones that you really might have to watch, because they're the ones who soak in a whole lot of information, they just soak it all in, and then they just,
They're typically manipulators, right? And you're probably not going to change their personality. That's just how they are. You want to insist on behavior that meets your expectations with them. And don't accept their excuses. Call them on it. If you find that they're starting to make excuses, stop them right there. And you never want to let them see if you become angry, right? That's with any of these too, not just this one.
It's hard.
It's very hard.
it's that count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, look in the sky. Okay, let's go. That's it. Because I had a person like that I had to counsel before when I was a supervisor, and she just thought that she was the best manipulator in the world, and she was always sneaking off somewhere, and she's always, you go look for her, she'd be gone somewhere. One day she just got up and decided that she was gonna take her fiance some lunch and just left. So guess what? When she got back, told her to clock out and go home. You wanted to leave, you clock out, you go home. Oh well, I
She was on the
just had to take it. I just had to take it. I just had to. He needed. I had to get my car and this that. You should have made these arrangements ahead of time. You just can't leave. You know, and it was always. Then it came with the baby syndrome, the waterworks, and the crying, and my kids, and my. Look, I got the same issues you got, boo. I can't do nothing about that. You just have to figure out a way to work around it. But right now, you're gonna clock out. You're gonna go home. Wasn't mad, wasn't angry, upset, yes, because I'm short. Now I'm short a person because I had to send her home, but it's something we had to deal with. I can't just let you leave and walk off at work because guess who? The next person going to try to leave and walk off at work too. And I'm going to have 2 people gone. I can't do it.
Right.
That's a counseling session.
Definitely. You want to make sure that you only use labels to guide your thinking. You don't want to directly apply a label to a person, an individual, especially not in writing. Why do you think that's the case?
Come back to haunt you.
Could come back to haunt you, legal implications. Just want to be careful about labeling people. Since we are about out of time, we'll stop here. We won't have time to get through it. But I think we got pretty far today. So we'll revisit this on the next lecture. Disruptive.